Welcome to Three, a show about Federer, Nadal, and Djokovic, and part of the Tennis Channel podcast network. I'm Gill Gross with Joel Drucker and Amy Lundy. A quick thanks, as you can see, some changes on the show. Thank you for Tennis Channel for believing in this concept, believing in us, and we're really excited to get started under this great banner. On today's episode, we want to get into some of the drama in Australia, but right now, Nadal and Novak are in Adelaide, Australia, South Australia, while the rest of the tour are in Melbourne. What are the next 2 weeks going to be like for all these players? How are those experiences going to change? And I guess some players right off the bat are a little bit bitter. I'll name specifically Benoit Paire, who was kind of had an eyebrow raised that the players in Adelaide, which include Dominic Thiem on the men's side, Serena Williams, Simona Halep, and Naomi Osaka on the women's side, they have better conditions, more specifically a gym in their hotel so that their 5 hours of training does not have to go towards fitness because they can use the hotel time towards fitness, and a larger entourage that they are allegedly allowed to bring. Joel, is there any kind of eyebrow raised for you about maybe the players in Adelaide having better conditions than everyone in Melbourne?
Yeah, that is really intriguing to see. And of course, it just shows you, as we've spoken about kind of the way that the top players and certain things that they get, and they're going to be playing this exhibition in 2 weeks. It's going to be interesting to see how how it plays out in the tournament, how fit they are and what goes on with the injuries and how all that shakes out. I think that's really going to be fascinating.
Well, I think in tennis we accept inequality sometimes for entertainment. And I think the way this worked out is there were Craig Tiley of Tennis Australia literally was having trouble getting the Victorian government to allow him to bring the number of people in. And that's why he wanted a second location. Adelaide said, okay, we'll take players, but we need tennis. We need a tournament. And that's why this exhibition was set up. I don't think we're going to be complaining when we have this great tennis in Adelaide. And I think it kind of follows a certain pattern we see in tennis. Wild cards, the ATP Cup, scheduling. These are all things that aren't necessarily fair by the definition of fair, but they're good for entertainment, and we accept a bit of inequality in exchange for extra entertainment.
Well, Gil, I think anyone who has ever played tennis, which we all three do, or any sport, feels for players who have to be cooped up in their hotel room for 2 weeks because they were on one of these now 3 planes where people tested negative on the way down and now they test positive. So due to the regulations by the government, are going to have to stay in strict, and I mean strict, quarantine for 2 weeks, and then come out and play. And the risk of injury is real, very real. I mean, can you imagine doing that? Now, I know you can say that you can work out in your hotel room, and um, you and I know, we all know, it's just not the same. So this morning, Novak wrote to Craig Tiley and um, made the following requests: that fitness and training materials, and I'm reading from his letter, fitness and training materials in all rooms, decent food, reduce the days of isolation for the 47 isolated players, that's now far more, carrying out more tests, permission to visit your coach and physical trainer as long as both have passed the tests. If the previous proposal has the green light, then both the player and his coach are on the same floor of the hotel. Move as many players as possible to private houses with a court to train. It's really about court time and being cooped up in that hotel.
Oh,
I
it's a
wonder
huge
though if
disadvantage.
I like those. I think that's pretty impressive of Novak to have presented that. I think the last one about the private housing and court time, that gets tricky and complicated and mobile. But yeah, these hotel rooms, uh, we've seen some of the tweets of players already hitting against the wall of their hotel room and even against the window, but I hope they're using lower compression balls. But I don't know, you're going to bring in all these Pelotons. I mean, how much exercise equipment? It's an intriguing thing. And it's interesting how they didn't think about that before, even with the 19 hours. I mean, 19 hours in the hotel room is a little stir crazy. I've talked to certain coaches and people about, what do you do during that time? How do you make that time productive? Our good mate Craig O'Shaughnessy was telling me, hey, this is a great time to study matches. But he told me something funny. He said, let's study matches, and you can study matches and video, and then also relax. And he was talking about the movie Dumb and Dumber. I said, so good, right. So smart and smarter by day, dumb and dumber by night, relax, enjoy, but still 19 hours and then 24 hours for some of these folks. That's going to be really hard. And it's going to be see how they come out of that.
Especially when their competitors don't have that scenario.
That's right, where they've gotten the 5 hours. Maybe we'll have to keep a list of, all right, who was on the 24-hour, who was on the 19-hour, who was in the Adelaide, and you see how it's going to play out during the tournament.
Australian doubles player Philip Oswald did an interview, and he said he's one of the players who needs 24 hours. And he said the hardest part is I can see the tennis courts out my window. So he's going to be watching these players train. I cannot think of a better way to psychologically torture a tennis player than to do that.
Oh, yeah. I mean, they have, I'll just go out on a limb here and say, Craig Tiley, Tennis Australia, they've got to get the sequestered players out for some amount of time. They got to figure out how to do it. If they have to have the players hitting on a lone court on a ball machine by themselves for a half hour each a day, they've got to get them out of that hotel. If they can test the crap out of them, and I'm guessing that they can, you can perform multiple tests per day. It's just completely unfair. It's not right. And they need to be flexible and kind of move with this situation.
Well, there's a story that comes to mind about this Vietnam POW who was in a POW camp, and he said, well, how am I going to pass this time? And so he was a golfer. And he visualized a round of golf, and he played the whole thing out in his head, like the first hole, and I'm driving, and here's my putt, and the second hole, and he did this for a while he's in there. So he comes out of the camp, and the first time he shoots a 72.
Yeah. Wow. Have you ever seen that? They did the same study with free throws. They took a group A and group B, and group A they had shoot 50 free throws a day. Group B, they had visualize making 50 free throws a day, and B did better. So,
well, and then in the meantime, also Australians, Ashley Barty, she's already out there because these folks. I'm intrigued to see these players like Barty and Kyrgios, who we haven't seen for a very long time, and where they are. So there's a lot of I will concede a lot of inequity on the whole prep front.
And the most important thing, just to say quickly, the most important thing is the player's health. And that includes their physical health as well. You don't want a ton of injuries, the second that they get back out there, Gill.
But it's also the health of the Australian public, which has, we have a cameo, the cat. Also the health of the Australian public, which is, as of yesterday, there have been 909 deaths in Australia throughout this entire pandemic. It's mind-blowing, the difference between them and some other countries such as the US. So they're handling this delicately because they have done so well to keep this virus under control. And that's what I would really say about Novak's requests is while I don't have anything against him writing to Craig Tiley and throwing that out there, I see it as completely infeasible. I see it as a complete non-starter. It's not up to Tennis Australia. It's the Victorian government. And Craig Tiley has already asked, can we test these players every day? Is that okay? Or can we only quarantine the players who are close to the positive tests in the specific planes? And the answer from the government has been no. And I don't think Novak Djokovic is going to be able to change that answer.
But it's significant that he's trying, Gil. If we can kind of bring it back to Novak, who he is as a person. You know, last year he started this effort to start the players union, and there was a lot of blowback, including from Federer and Nadal, who said that this is a time for unity. But I tweeted yesterday in response to a Belinda Bencic quote about the poor conditions and the unequal conditions that, look, this is why Novak wanted to start this players union. And the players need to listen to him because he's not helping himself by trying to devote all this time and energy to creating change, positive change in the sport. He's not helping himself on the court. Many of his fans and coaches have said, look, I just wish you would not do this. Just focus on playing and being the GOAT and all that. But he is someone who is driven to be involved and to try to affect change.
That's interesting. Well, it's interesting to see Novak wanting to play a leadership role in the sports, and maybe sometimes for some people that kind of other engagements, extracurricular activity, can help the other activity. Arthur Ashe was president of the ATP, the second president. Lots of politics going on in tennis. They were involved in litigation with Jimmy Connors, who he ended up playing in the Wimbledon final. So, and Charlie Pastorell, Arthur Ashe's best friend, said this maybe helped him. So maybe it's a kind of it's a balancing, and so maybe it's something that Novak is going to help his tennis. Certainly he's going to be fit. Certainly he's training, and obviously the training they've done before they even got on these planes to Australia is significant. The extent of that, but it's interesting to see him seeking to play this leadership role. Again, we're going to be following very closely throughout the year this whole players union, the role of the men in it, the players, I don't know, okay, what about the woman in that? And does that mean anything? And how's that play out? So it's going to be interesting to see how this continues throughout the year, and Novak's desire to play this leadership role on behalf of a great many players. And again, he doesn't need it. He's in the 0.001%, but that he wants to do other things, that's intriguing.
Yeah, it's just right now not a lot of material has happened with the Players Association. I really thought that would happen this summer. I thought once the players got done playing, this was going to be kind of, or excuse me, not summer, but this was going to be an off season of political reckoning in the sport, and then just absolutely nothing happened. And I don't think anything's going to happen here either. So, I mean, when it comes to grading Djokovic as a politician, you'd say he's saying the right things, but nothing is happening. Although I do acknowledge that there has been some very charitable moments for Djokovic, supporting the lower ranked players over the quarantine, giving them money and making sure they're supported. So that has been material. But in terms of structural change, nothing quite has happened yet.
Well, I hope that people, especially people who are not fans of Novak, if you're in Camp Rafa or if you're Fed Nation, I hope that people will not hold Novak to an impossible standard of perfection when it comes to the political, because that's just not fair. He hasn't been trained in that arena, and he's doing the best he can. And again, he is trying to be a positive force and make change. The other two guys have said, we kind of like it the way it is. We're doing really well and we like the sport and all that. And obviously Novak sees that differently. So no, he's not going to do everything perfectly. The announcement, they didn't include the women, blah, 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 blah. But this is what he's doing is hard.
Well, we're going to see through the course of 2021 what this PTPA seeks to accomplish and how it seeks to go, not accomplish, to attempt to do. I mean, you're right. I'm not going to hold it for what it's accomplished, because it's complicated, politics and administration, but how it continues to demonstrate some leadership. So I'll be intrigued. And I've said before, I want to see what they want to do. That involves also the fans to some degree, the people who are paying to go to these events. And of course, this is going to be a tricky year. I mean, I wrote a story the other day about quarantine, the year of playing dangerously. I mean, the calendar is going to be a jingle jangle. Events are going to be sliding back and forth. Players are going to testing. We're not going to see as many tournaments where we have 19 of the top 20 in the field, or 20 of the top 20. It's going to be intriguing, and they're going to be upsets, and there's going to be physical stuff. And again, I think for the players, kind of a constant looming dread. I mean, airports and hotels and transportation have been kind of for years, they've been half asleep when they do that stuff. And now every airport, every hotel, every check-in, every room, it's kind of got its whole malingering dread factor to it. And even that's true whether you're Novak and you have all the accoutrements and for a qualifier. It's
right.
a lot of stress this year.
So guys, I want to take you to the Wayback Machine about, I don't know, 10 podcasts ago. Remember when Novak first brought out the PTPA and there was the statement from Pospisil and Novak and the others, muckety mucks involved? What was the one word that I was, and everybody says it's about money, it's about money, it's about money, it's about prize. Amenities, right? Yay, you remembered. So that has come to bear here because we have a player, Kuznetsova, yesterday checks into her hotel room. She's got her cup of tea. She's trying to relax and maybe get some sleep after a long flight. And there's a mouse in her room. And she cannot get anyone's attention from the hotel, from tenant. Nobody can help her with this mouse for over 2.5 hours. And, that's one. Like, what if she had a medical emergency or something like that and she couldn't get anyone's attention for 2.5 hours? And how are you supposed to get sleep with a mouse in your room? And then another report is that some of the players have suites and some of the players just have regular rooms. I mean, we can scoff at them, but these are very real life things for the players, and the amenities are important to them as they train for these world-class tournaments.
But isn't that just a product of architecture? I mean, if you put a bunch of players in a hotel, the people at the top are going to get the penthouse, right? So I think, look,
get another hotel, try to make it more even. I mean,
yeah, and I think that's probably
Gill,
what they didn't do. But
millions upon millions upon millions of dollars these federations are bringing in from these slams.
As bad as I feel for the players, and I give them full license to complain, I love complaining. Okay, I'm a Jerry Seinfeld fan. I'm a Larry David fan. I love complaining, and they can complain, but at the same time, and these things to me are not mutually exclusive. The players can complain, and Tennis Australia can be praised. And really, I think that they have done mostly everything right. And I think those two things can both be true. I know everything is a strong word, and I think the communication could have been better from Tennis Australia to spell it out for these players, exactly what the situation might be if players tested positive on these planes, on these charters. But I mean, this is a massive undertaking. As much money as they have, Amy, it's insane what they're doing. A lot of Australians can't go to Australia. They're trapped out of their own country. And now we're putting on a tennis tournament with a bunch of international players. You could imagine what the government is demanding here and how hard it is to adhere to those demands.
Yes, and you raise a good point. And the health and security of the country really is the most important thing. The question is, how do you balance it all? What can you do within these confines?
Yeah, I'm still thinking about Kuznetsova and the mouse. I'm sure she's had other unheeded phone calls in her career, but this is all dramatized. I'm sure every player has had some odd hotel stories in their career, even in non-pandemic times, about odd things that have happened. But now, of course, I think this gets to the kind of the lingering dread stress. It's like, wow, there's a pandemic, and we got this stuff, and I can't even get a mouse dealt with. And Amy, you point out so well, what if I do have a medical emergency and there's something that goes on again? That's what's going to make this is going to be such an interesting year in tennis. I mean, last year we were just grateful. Okay, at the end of the year, we got some tennis, a couple of bubbles. Let's get through it. It's November. It's over. How nice that we each got to play 4 or 5 tournaments. But now to see how the whole year is going to play out. I mean, so it's And now after Australia, is it on to Europe, and what's Miami, and what's Florida? And each of these regions is going to have its own peculiar set of protocols and testing and transportation and coming in contact with people and masking. And whew, I mean, while the vaccine is attempting to get implemented too.
Yeah, well, Australia is apparently going to be pretty comfortable for the players after they get through the 2 weeks, because the guidelines are, go from extraordinarily strict when you come from travel, and then they loosen up tremendously. I'm pretty sure that players are going to be looking forward to eating at restaurants without masks in 2 weeks.
Well, and one of the nice things about the Australian Open, of all the four, it's the one where the tournament is closest to the city.
Mm-hmm.
So that has a very nice quality to it, where so it has it would be as if the US Open was played in Central Park. So
Yeah.
there's something nice about that makes it very cozy.
I want to.
Yeah, go on, Gil.
Sorry about that, Joel. I was just going to say I did want to end with the tennis, and how dead or what do you think? How severe will the effects of 14 days no tennis be compared to the players who do get to train the 5 hours? And for Djokovic team and Nadal, how important might it be that they get their 5 hours of tennis plus their hotel gyms and the extra entourage? I mean, how significant might this be when it comes to actually projecting the results of the Australian Open?
Well, I think
Sometimes this kind of thing can be paradoxical. So if you're one of the players that was free and you had your 5 hours and everything's great, you got a suite, you then have more pressure to perform. And just like Joel said, maybe the other guy is sitting there visualizing and he comes out, and it's like, when you've been away from the court for a while, you feel so free when you're finally back on again, and expectations are lowered. And so that will be interesting to see.
The first time after the layoff, yeah, maybe the second time, then you regain the expectations. And then on a much lower stress basis, it reminds me of the US Open, when there used to be the Saturday semis and the Sunday final. And there was always this question, well, did the person who had to play that second semi, were they less fit to play the final, or did they have this adrenaline, or they just riding high anyway? And I haven't ever looked at the data. I mean, there'd be some interesting data to see who played the first semi and who played the later semi and how that affected them for the final. So, of course, this is only about, 5,000 times more stressful to have this quarantine. But that's a great point, Amy. They're going to have the 5 hours, though. I talked to a couple of coaches. It's 5 hours of time. So it's tennis, it's fitness, it's walking outdoors. It's just kind of, it's that too. I mean, I know, Gil, you got your Spanish suffering. Your thing is 5 hours of drilling, 5 hours of cross courts and down the lines, right? But it also can be just, a half hour, like a coach, half hour, take a walk.
Yep.
Half hour, go get your nails done. Go something to just unwind.
Yeah, and the complaint, I think, is that the people in Adelaide, they get to actually work out and it doesn't count towards their 5 hours in a gym. That's the complaint. I'm not that concerned about the tennis when it comes to the 14 days layoff. I'm more concerned about the fitness, and I'm really hoping that, as Amy alluded to earlier, that there aren't injuries. I think that's a great point about the pressure. And it reminds me of me as a player when I found that I take a long layoff and I take the court for the first time in a long time. First time I play, I'm expecting to shank every ball. I'm always like, whoa, that wasn't so bad. Second time I play, yeah, this is great. Third time I play, I'm furious with myself. I can't believe I'm not playing better. It's terrible. Like, I don't know what happened. That tends to be how it goes.
Mine is the second time. Mine is the first time back. Like you said, hey, not bad for the layoff. Okay, not as rusty as I thought. And the second time, why aren't I fully back? What's going on? Right.
Yeah.
Well, following that formula, maybe we would see some early upsets, but then things would the cream would rise to the top. So it'll be interesting to see.
I don't know, Amy, since you're kind of our nominal head of research, maybe we can have you, as the rounds progress in Australia, I see this Excel spreadsheet of you, like the Adelaide, the Adelaide group, the 24 hours, the 19-hour group, and you can see and you can track how they're doing.
Why not?
But we're all a little concerned about some injuries and odd defaults and things like that.
I'm just concerned about the mouse.
We need amenities, no mouses in the hotel rooms. And Amy, we have a spreadsheet assignment for the Australian Open, don't we?
Yes, absolutely. I'll get right on that.
That'll do it for this episode of 3. Remember, we're available on all podcast platforms. On YouTube, make sure you subscribe, like the video, leave a comment. We greatly appreciate it if you leave a review on Apple Podcasts. And we will see you next time on the next episode of 3.